Hey, how's it, brother?
Good morning, Charles.
How's it, bro?
Um, all right, I guess. You know, it's just one of those days, one of those days that just a very confusing day, very confusing day. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I guess at this point we just gotta wait and see. I think we just gotta wait and see. Anyway, aloha everybody and welcome to Facebook Live with Mel and Charlie. Hit
Hey,
the share
sure.
button tonight. We get Dr. Lee Evslin, well-known Kauai physician, very, very special doctor in our lives, Patsy and I, because he took care of my son when my son was an infant and suffering from some heart issues at an infant age. So, we love Dr. Evslin to the moon and back. And little did I know, almost 30 years later, he would be here on our show talking about COVID-19. But he's a retired health administrator. If you guys know, he was with Wilcox, and I mean, just well versed in the medical field. And we did have him on with a group in the past with the Kauai discussion group. But tonight he's going to be on. He may be bringing some friends with him. We don't know. But basically, we're going to be talking about this pre-travel test plan that we've been talking about a lot. Charlie, it hit me today kind of hard that we're only 3 days away. We're only 3 days away from thousands of visitors coming in from all over the United States, hot zones throughout the country, coming here on one test. We'll talk about that once the doctor gets on. But yeah, it hit me kind of hard because as I watched the news today, throughout the day,
Mhm.
I am actually more confused today than I was prior to today. It seems like the closer we get to what I call D-Day, the more confusing it gets. And it's not a funny matter. It's a serious matter. It's you know I just I don't know, man. I'm just beginning to really question what what everybody's doing. Really, I mean, not that I didn't question before, but you would think that by now, 3 days prior, that we would have the stuff together, and we don't. We don't. I hear different programs for Big Island, Maui, Kauai. I hear, uh, Kauai. I did watch Derek's interview with the Star Advertiser today, and I gotta tell you, and not just because he's from Kauai, and not because he's a friend of mine. Mike Victorino's a friend of mine. Harry Kim's a friend of mine. Ige, I'm not sure. He's probably not my friend, but he was a friend of mine, and Josh. But Derek was the only one that made any sense. He's the only one that really had a plan that was workable, that was backed up by medical science, and that plan got shit canned. It got shit canned. And he's trying to work with the governor. He's trying to come up with a second plan that, based on the restrictions that the governor placed on him, and we cannot even get a response from the governor. Um, but I watch the press conferences. I watch the news. I watch I read the stories. I read the paper. I read as much as I can. And I got to tell you, Charlie, I'm more confused today than I was yesterday. And 3 more days. 3 more days.
Well, today was one of those days that I want to be positive. Okay, I don't want to come up with anything negative because it just will feel like a gut shot. And I don't think we're there yet. I mean, because there's so much. That's the sad thing about it. It has all the appearance, and I've seen this before, uh, ramping up to an election. I've seen this kind of play before when there was a real important issue at hand, but the election was there, and so there's a lot of backdoor. It seems like backdoor politicking going on. There's a lot of moves being made, and people like ourselves who are not in the politic realm, um, they get upset because they're being left out. Everybody has a personal stake in this, and they say that, hey, we stick together, we work through this together, and everything just has a very, very, what's going on now is very, very negative in some ways. And I cannot help but feel I'm angry in a sense because it feels like our mayor is being totally left out in the cold. But we're fighters, and we will not let him freeze by himself. And I'm thankful that other people are coming to support him, and they're not from Kauai. I can see many of our viewers that follow us who are not from Kauai that support him as well. So I'd like to say thank you to all of you. But that's how I feel. I feel like, man, we're we're left out in the cold, and we got to fend for ourselves. Okay, if you do that, it's like, you know, you can go with the rest of your buddies, go hunting with rifles and bullets, but you leaving us with just one bayonet. That's the way I feel. And so, the way I look at it is, hey, we make the best out of bayonet, and and if we just take our time, I'm pretty sure we'll come back with some good food to grind. We're not going to starve. We're not going to starve.
That's what it comes down to. I mean, we as a community got to band together and support each other. I mean, that's just what we got to do. Uh, whether we all agree or disagree, at some point we got to support our leaders. I mean, the one thing good about being on Kauai is our leaders, Derek and his team never led us astray. Never did from day one. Um, and so it's a lot easier to support and defend and back up a leader like that. It's so much easier than a wavering leader, a leader that changes his tune every single day. Even Caldwell today, I don't know if you noticed Caldwell's, now he's talking about the second test and they're going to do a trial run. They can do 10,000 tests a day. All of these things, all of a sudden, 3 days before, uh, they're starting to think, maybe a little too late, dingalings. Maybe it's a little too late. We had 7 freaking months, people, 7 months. And now 3 days before we started, oh, maybe we can do, maybe. Huh. So that's the frustration, man. I mean, and Derek to me had the most sensible plan, but if you watch his interview today, and I know we got two people in the waiting room, but if you watch Derek's interview today, he said the governor gave him 3 conditions. Number one, the county had to pay for the test on their own. Number two, they had to administer their test at a county facility. We're not designed that way, So in other words, we couldn't contract with a third party, a nonprofit or a medical facility. And then we couldn't do a quarantine because this is what really angered me, because he already made a commitment to the visitors that if they took a test 72 hours before they arrived in Hawaii, that they wouldn't be subject to quarantine. So we cannot change that. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, I mean, um, let me just get a breath here and then we'll bring the guys
I
up.
like to say thank you, people. This is not the aurora borealis in the background. This is the fumes that coming up from my body because I'm upset.
Yeah, I was trying to get the aurora, the northern lights. I was trying to get the northern lights on my background, but unfortunately, even the northern lights said, no, thank you, Mel. We're pissed off. We're not coming to your island. Yeah, I was trying to get the aurora. Uh-oh, somebody's watching on Facebook. I think, who is that?
Oh, that must have been Stephanie, because
Aha, yeah, see?
she's muted right now. That's why.
Yeah, you can go ahead
Guys,
and unmute. Hey, Doc, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Yan, are you unmuted?
I'm unmuted. Thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you for the late notice. Thank you, Doc. Yeah, everybody knows Dr. Lee Evslin, world renowned, loved by all here in Kauai and throughout, I think, the world.
That's you
I,
guys you're talking about.
I said a little story before we came on, Doc, how you helped our son when he was an infant with his supraventricular tachycardia.
Oh,
And
really?
remember Baron, he's almost 30 now,
Yes,
but
yes, I actually do.
so you have a very special place in our heart for that. So I was just telling Charlie, who would know 30 years later you would be on Facebook Live with Mel and Charlie talking about COVID-19.
And
I
let's not
know.
forget about Dr. Stephanie Yan as well. She is joining us. Thank you so much for joining at the last minute. But it's always a pleasure having input from you as well. So thank you to both of you. We look like a good group tonight that we can cover a lot of things. I believe we can cover a lot of things.
Well, I would tell a story about Dr. Stephanie Yan and my son, but I think she's younger than my son. So, she's, uh, so Doc, let's start with you, Dr. Evans, real quick. What your background? What are you doing now? And then we'll go over to Stephanie Yan, and then we'll get into some really good discussion.
All right. Well, one, thanks again for having us on your show. It's such an honor to be on the Today Show, basically. You guys have become really world famous. I moved to Kauai. My wife and I, we came in 1979, came here with two small kids that had been born in Maine. And we've been here ever since. Luke and Nathaniel were born at Wilcox, and then Luke and Nathaniel had their kids at Wilcox. So in a blink of time, there were 3 generations of us haunting the island. And I was a physician at Kauai Medical Clinic for many, many years. I became the CEO of Kauai Medical Clinic, and then I was the CEO of Wilcox Hospital, and I was senior vice president in Hawaii Pacific Health in the time period that happened after we merged with them. And then in the final 4 years here on Kauai, I actually opened up a small private practice in Kapa'a, which was wonderful fun. Was just something different, essentially. And that was my last 4 years. I finished that in 2014. And I kind of retired, but I've been writing a column for the paper, and this whole pesticide thing blew up, and they made this state-sponsored pesticide task force, and I was on that for almost a year and a half. So I've kind of kept my foot in the door of issues, and this COVID issue blew up, and this group across the state basically has been formed, several groups of physicians and community leaders looking at the COVID issues. So I've been involved with them since that time. That's a brief summary.
Well, thank you again, Doc. Thank you again to have someone with your background in history. And Dr. Yan,
Hello.
what's up, girl?
Aloha. You guys have been busy.
Yeah, I mean, we
had
haven't
amazing
stopped.
people come on, and I think your show does a lot of good to guide our community in the right kind of conversations to have. So thank you for that to you and Mel and Charlie. I feel like all the conversations you've had on here for the last few months have been right on, and you brought in key people to talk about the inside stuff that's going on. So about me, I'm a general trauma and critical care surgeon here in Maui. I have my own solo practice. I've been involved with COVID related stuff since March with high COVID. And I've just been really involved with the PPE, procurement, contact tracing, quarantine management application, and then also contact tracing as well. And then getting testing here in Maui.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. We have been we're quite familiar with most of the groups, and we're honored as well to be included in a lot of the email conversations that have been going on. We've been contacted by a lot of people, and what's very interesting in this whole issue is the amount of doctors, medical professionals that have stepped forward, spoken out, and that's really the topic I think tonight we wanted to get across was, and I told Charlie before you all came on that today I'm more confused today than I was yesterday. Every single day we go on, things change, rules change, positions change, and we have, and I'll speak about Kauai. We have been kind of doing a good job here as far as COVID is concerned. And what I thought was a really good plan that our mayor submitted to, and this is about the pre-travel testing program that the state has implemented. And we're 3 days away, by the way. We're 3 days away. So we had a plan that I think everybody bought into. A lot of the medical professionals supported it. They wanted to see a little longer period than 72 hours. Nonetheless, they wanted a quarantine plus a test, and everyone thought that was going to happen and that we would be very safe. And then, of course, the governor rejected that plan, and now our mayor's trying to find something else that can help keep Kauai safe. And again, and today the governor gave, or the mayor spoke with the Star Advertiser, and he gave 3 restrictions or conditions that the governor laid out. One was that the testing had to be paid for by the county. The second thing was the testing had to be performed by the county in a county facility, and it couldn't include any type of quarantine because he didn't want, because he had made a commitment to the travelers, the visitors, that there would be no quarantine. So in essence, he doesn't want to go back on his word to the visitors. So in essence, now we have no quarantine. We have people coming in starting on the 15th, 1 test, 72 hours prior to departure, and they will be able to come in and travel the state. So I just wanted to preface the discussion with that, Dr. Evslin. I wanted to go to you first because you've been very active. I've read your articles, I've read your emails. So let's start there and then go wherever this discussion will take us.
Okay, so we've been watching all of this with great interest also. So a couple things. I'm going to just start with the WHO. This is some research actually that Luke did, but I think it's very pertinent to this. So the World Health Organization has guidelines for opening up places safely. And they basically say you need to watch with great attention if the area that they're coming from has more transmission, more disease than the area that they're going to, that puts you at high risk. And then if you're going to be in this risk situation, you need to make sure that you have the hospital capacity. So by definition, the neighbor islands are in a risk situation. We essentially do not have hospital capacity. We do not have hospital staffing that can take a real surge. We certainly don't have the ICU beds or the ventilators if we had a surge. And we are, at this rate of almost no disease, we'll be taking travelers from areas that have high levels of disease. So we're in the category that they would consider high risk. And personally, I feel it's appalling for the state administration to say to the neighbor islands, they're basically saying, we think we have the surge capacity on Oahu. It's okay you don't have the capacity there. It's okay that the places that these are coming from have much higher transmission rates than you. You have to do just what we have to do. It's truly appalling, particularly because people like our mayor had plans that worked. We had a quarantine that he was discussing. In other words, a second test after a quarantine. If I was designing it, it would have been a little longer quarantine, but it's still along the right lines. That's what you need is 2 tests. And I'm going to come back to why 1 test, which I know you've discussed other times on the show, or why 1 test is kind of a serious problem. So the second part of it is, okay, what do we know about these areas of higher transmission and higher disease burden that would be coming to us? And if you just look at this morning's news, basically 31 states in the mainland have a major increase in cases, a surge going on. 13 states have record-breaking increases. This was all this morning's news. England, so that we have Europeans that come to us, obviously. England quadrupled in the past 3 weeks the number of cases they have. They're actually returning to where they were in their peak back in March. France, Spain, Belgium, Germany, all dramatically increasing. Canada is up 30%. So where they're coming from is not reassuring in terms of us. And what's interesting is, the US is kind of a pariah state right now. People don't want tourists from the US. So we in Hawaii are going to basically be saying, okay, pariah mainland, nobody else wants you, come to us. And that's a serious problem. And there was a New York Times article in mid-September called Fencing. And the New York Times, written by, sophisticated journalists that were taking their stuff from a lot of experts. And they basically said, and it's true, that no place anywhere that hasn't done fencing has done well. So the countries that had good fences, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan to some degree, they've done pretty well with their disease. Every place that has opened with a pre-test has done terrible. Iceland opened with a single pre-test. They stopped it. They then went on to having 2 tests after a 5-day quarantine, very similar to what we would like to do here. And they're still having a surge, but they're doing better. Tahiti, you can stop me at any moment if you want to ask a question, but I can kind of go on with this if you want.
Well,
Tahiti,
you know, I do want to stop you right there only because I
Okay.
want to remind the people. Charlie, where's your high-tech graphic? This is just too important not to share, okay, people? And I sorry to interrupt, but I know we did this early on, and I'm looking at the numbers rise. So there's some new people on. Please hit the share button. That's all you got to do. Hit the share button. Thank you. Okay, Doc.
Okay, and I'm, put your hand up and say stop at any time, but I can go on for a little bit on this stuff just because we've been immersed in it essentially. Tahiti is a perfect example for us. Another island nation. By the way, Hawaii is doing the worst. Oahu is doing the worst of any Pacific place at this point. But anyway, Tahiti did wonderfully. They shut themselves down hard. They had virtually no cases as of July 15th. July 15th, with a lot of fanfare, they opened up with a single pre-test and a second test after no quarantine and kind of voluntary. You would just come down and get this less sophisticated test. 3 weeks went by, it looked quiet, it looked like they were doing fine, and they exploded. And I think they're up over 2,500 cases now, and there's articles in the paper that they're expecting they may go up to 100,000 cases.
Cool.
And it's interesting, Tahiti, so they went from 0 to, once the 2 or 3 weeks went by and they surged, they went up to over 2,000 cases. They're not backing off. They've apparently, or at least they're saying right now, they're going forward for herd immunity. They're just going to let it go through the community. And Luke has friends down there that are paddlers, Tahitian paddlers, and they're talking to him and they're saying, it's terrible. This central government's telling us we want herd immunity. We, the community, we don't want herd immunity. This is terrible. We're taking the burden of this.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
With regards to herd immunity, was there any other time that you know of, you're the medical expert here, that the U.S. or even Hawaii had gone through a situation of having a herd immunity? Because I don't think Hawaii has lost that many people to get to that point, correct?
No, at this point, certainly not. We're not even, we're close because.
So, when they talk about the herd immunity, for, even like for Hawaii, like how it's been mentioned several times by Dr. Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, I'm always baffled by thinking, how many people do we have to sacrifice to get to that?
Absolutely.
And so, I've been following this, the travel, just monitoring, because we're approaching the winter seasons, and that's when a lot of travelers like to come to Hawaii. And because Hawaii's numbers, especially the outer islands, are so low, they actually, it promotes itself as the safest place. So what they're going to do is basically gang up, and this is where I think if the state is smart, they will have to really control the influx, because I think there's going to be a lot. And today, Mr. Ingram from Hawaiian Airlines made a comment, and they asked him, of all people, is the state ready to open? And Hawaiian Airlines said, yes, we're ready to open. We've got all these tests done for the airlines. I said, hey, pal, what about for the hospitals? What about for the frontline workers? I mean, you're talking about your airlines here. I said, but it's okay to bring the Opala, should it turn out that way. But when it leaves, somebody's gonna have to deal with it back here. And I think that's where they forgot the message a little.
I think that what's gone on in Alaska can provide us with a lot of information that we should be watching closely. So Alaska is another, just like us, it's not adjacent to the mainland US, so they have a way to kind of shut their border, and they shut down, and they did a pretty good job. On June 5th, they said, okay, we're opening up with a single pre-test, same kind of thing. You need to they said you had to take a quarantine until your test came back if you came without it, over with a single pre-test. And they had about 600 cases at that point. They took a huge leap. I think within 6 weeks, they were at 2,500. By 2 months, they were at 4,500. It's now 4 months out there at 10,000. Now, people might say, well, their tourism season is over, which it is. Their tourism ends kind of early September. But I have a good friend that's a district health officer in Alaska, and I talked to him yesterday. And he basically said it was like we lit a forest fire. And you have little kindling everywhere, and the kindling just takes off all over the state. And the kindling was all kinds of things. It was people coming to work in their fishing factories, people coming to go fishing, workers that they brought in for a variety of their industries, and they all act this little bit of kindling. And we were looking at their stats with him, my friend, the district health officer, and so out of 10,000 cases, 1,000 were non-residents. 1,000 of the cases they identified. But there are two other things about Alaska that are really important, I think, for us to pay attention to. One of the questions that comes up, and one of the things that we actually argued with the lieutenant governor about, is what's the prevalence in travelers? So we know when we look at these states out there where they're doing testing, they're finding 5, 10, 15, 20% positive rates in some of these states that are surging. But people will say that's not travelers, that's people that are coming in for a variety of reasons to be tested. But what Alaska did is if you didn't get your single pretest, you had to get tested at the airport before you left the airport. So they did 70,000 people at the airport when they came in, and they got a prevalence of 0.6%. And 0.6% is 6 per 1,000. So 6 per 1,000 was coming into their state who were positive and hadn't been picked up before. And I want to just talk about that 6 per 1,000. The evidence is really good and accepted by medical experts and people that are experts in statistics and so on, that at least 30% of those people that you do with a single test are going to be missed. And the reason is, I get the virus, it slowly builds in my body over 3 to 4 days. No test can pick it up in the first 3 days. 33% of tests might pick it up in the 4th day. Even by the 8th day, 20% of the tests are so-called falsely negative. So they know that anybody with a single pretest, you're going to miss 30% of the cases. So that means if they had 6 per 1,000 that were coming through their airports, it meant there were really 9 per 1,000. 6 that they picked up and 3 they missed because they were missing 1/3. Okay, so let's take that scenario, because those are real numbers. Those are people coming in. Let's take that number and go use them in Hawaii. If we in Hawaii pre-tested, so they pre-test these 1,000 people that say might come every day to Kauai, they're going to find 6 of them are positive on the pretest. They're going to say, sorry, you can't come, go home. They're going to miss 3. So every day, 3 people, this is approximate, of course, and it's going to vary, but approximately 3 people a day per 1,000 tourists coming to Kauai, let's say, are going to be positive and have been missed. And so under this system, out they go into the community, 3 per day. If we have 1,000 per day for a month, that's 90 a month coming into an outer island, essentially. And if we're popular, and if I was looking, where do I want to go right now? Would I want to go to Oahu? It's got plenty of disease, or come to Kauai, which doesn't have any? We may be, and Maui, and any of the other neighbor islands, we may be way over 1,000. So by the kind of modeling of the disease, we know it's going to miss 1/3, and we know 1/3 of the cases, and we know they're going to be wandering around. And then the whole issue comes up with this community spread. The typical tourist isn't in a big crowded place, particularly on Kauai, where we don't have that much of a bar scene or anything. But they go into a store or a restaurant and they give it to one person. That one person goes home, brings it to their family, and then it spreads through that family's network. That's called community spread in a certain way. I love it. Our district health officer is so fine, so good, she may find that source. But many times this becomes community spread. The cousin goes out to, some other cousin, and then that's it. That's community spread. But it all came from that one little seed. And that's basically what happens with that piece of it. And the very last piece that I think is really important out of Alaska, so they're very carefully measuring what happens in ethnic groups. The typical ethnic group, the hospitalization rate is around 6 or 7%, just like it has been here in Hawaii. The Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander hospital rate in Alaska is 19%. They're more than double any other group. And so, they have the comorbidities is certainly a piece of it. American food for indigenous people is poison, essentially. Our sugar-loaded food makes indigenous, they can't handle the sugar like us people that are used to junky food for generations. Any indigenous group that ate good food, a couple of generations back cannot handle the stuff that we feed them. And so there are all these comorbidities in the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community, and we need to 19% is a really high percentage. And again, we saw that surge on Oahu in the Pacific Islanders. For some reason, it didn't seem to get as much into the Native Hawaiian, but the Native Hawaiian group is sitting there, ready to be hit by this. So I'm going to pause for a second here, but I think we need to learn from Alaska. Alaska has a lot to tell us, and it's not good. Very last thing is, my friend, the district health officer, I think he said this, but the day we called him, he was late to our phone call, and we said, "Oh, what happened?" And he said, "Oh, there was a hockey tournament last week. We tested 200 of them, 100 were positive." And again, he said, it's like a forest fire. You ignite this forest fire, and the ability to put it out is not good. So I'm going to pause there. Somebody else jump in.
And actually, a good lesson from Alaska is that they actually had a good capture of the data. And so that part, I'm not sure we can capture the data here in Hawaii that well. And I'm not sure if there's a political will to capture good data as well to inform what we can do in the next few weeks after we start to open with a system that's currently proposed. And so if there's not a political will or desire to capture the data, those 3 out of 1,000 or 9 out of 1,000 that can come through with a positivity will not be counted as part of Hawaii positivity. And then how to keep track of where those touches happen, the spread from the travelers to the community happens. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Evslin, but in that data too from Alaska, there was a high percentage of community spread where they couldn't trace
Yes,
where those cases were coming from.
They do a wonderful job of saying what did their tracing show them. And basically you see non-residents, residents, and this huge gray area they had no idea. And they basically can't close the cases. And he said we're totally overwhelmed, our ability now. But in any way, it's difficult to close these cases, to really go back and see where they came from.
Well, a big problem, and we talk about this a lot, is how, the contact trace a visitor is difficult. It's just, if we're traveling inter-island, you're coming to visit family or to work or whatever the case may be from another island, you pretty much know everybody that you're going to see. You know what locations you're going to go stop at. When you're a visitor and you come here, you stop typically 3 restaurants. How many visitor attractions you're going to stop at? How many shops are you going to stop at, or stores? And for that visitor to remember and identify any specific people they may have come in contact with is impossible. And that is a huge problem. Contact tracing visitors are going to be very difficult versus contact tracing for a local resident that's coming to visit family. The other thing is the testing of someone pre-flight coming over. We've heard a lot about, the airlines, of course, are all saying it's very safe. You cannot get sick in the plane, blah, blah, blah. We know that's not true, but there's no way of, how do you trace it back to an airplane? It's going to be difficult. Everybody saw the Purdue study. I think everybody saw the Purdue study. I actually have it here, and I want to it's a very short animation that I want to show, because I think it's important that that the people see this thing here. And are you guys seeing that screen?
Yep.
Okay, so that's simulating someone coughing or sneezing. And while the HEPA or whatever filters they are in the plane, it doesn't stop the droplets that are airborne, that are circulating through that cabin and around the location of the guy that's sneezing. So this is my concern. You could test negative, or you could be totally safe and healthy, and then someone in that plane who might be infectious but didn't test positive, allowed to get on that plane, and then you get to see how people can get infected in that airplane. Now, these people will not be subject to a second test. They will not be subject to a second test. Therefore, how many of these people pick up those droplets and get infected? We don't know. But we will never know unless they get sick here. But we know that, 4, 5, 6 days before people get symptoms, people are here for 5 or 6 days. And and they're not going to go to the doctor. If you're on vacation and you're on day 5 or day 6 of a 7-day vacation, and you start getting a sore throat or you start getting a little fever, you know that if you go to the doctor, your butt is going to be stuck in quarantine on Kauai for 14 days or until you get a test. So they're going to jump on that plane going home. And they'll leave that virus behind and there will be no trace. How in the heck you can trace that exposure? You won't. That's why that second test is so vital.
You know, today I put out a post and I posed this question to you too, doctor. And this goes along the guides of contact tracing, because that seems to have always been somewhat the weakness in the state of Hawaii, has been the contact tracing, which is a very vital component to really any investigation. But the post I put out today was, you have passenger A and passenger B on the same flight. They both come out and say they both test and they're positive. Now the question I pose is, who gave who the virus? if they're both on the same plane.
Right.
See, so that's the mystery, because the state seems to be picking it up from the airport out. I kind of would like to know, going backwards, if it happened somewhere at the ticket gate at San Francisco, that other flights are coming to, maybe it was a person working at the counter that's giving it to people that's coming on flights to Hawaii, if it was at the Hawaii counter. Because then all you have is this replication of infected people coming in. Now, some may say, you know, Charlie, that might be a little far-fetched, but I said, but that's the reality of it. We don't know. If there was data to support, no, that never happened, then I'd say, okay, I wouldn't post anything like that. But it all comes down to, you know, it's like a police officer. You know, Mel and I have been police officers. We get to a case, you get a fight between two people. You need to decide who started the fight first, who threw the first punch, because one person is going to get arrested and one person is going to be the victim. But if both of them get a lot of injuries, we got to decide who started that reaction to cause all of that physical damage to each other. And I think with something like this, that's the suspenseful part of all of this.
You know, just to follow up on that, so statistically 30% are going to get missed because you're going to be in this incubation period, or you're just not going to get picked up. So at least 30% are missed. Say you get that, just like you're saying, say you get that test 72 hours before you get here, 30% are missed just by the rule of the test. Then you could also pick up the virus in the next 3 days before you leave. You could pick it up in your goodbye party before you get it. You could pick it up on the plane or the airport. That's a whole nother percentage. And that takes that 30% that's kind of built into the testing, which Dr. Fauci kind of alluded to, and Josh Green was leading him with questions in a certain way, but he alluded to the fact that this, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, that there's a weakness in this pre-testing like this. But you add in the fact that you can get it after the test, that's a serious, you know, that brings that percentage to more like 40%. So I'm using conservative numbers to say, one of the questions that came up is, okay, what do we do? What do we do? I have some comments on that if you want to get there, or Stephanie want to add something?
Yeah, Stephanie, about the testing.
I just want to add that it's
this lag between the test taken on the mainland and the potential of contracting the virus or being in that incubation stage or the latency stage before they get here.
I just want to comment on that, because there is that latency stage or incubation stage where you don't see symptoms, but you can be infectious. And what we don't know where people are in that graph, where their viral loads are and where the symptoms are. I'm assuming they won't be symptomatic because you have the screening at the airports for symptoms. But then deciding how to quarantine them and when to do the second test, if it's allowed to do the second test, is a whole nother science to it. You know, you can't just ignore the science of that and say, let's just do a second test randomly when they arrive or 2 days later. There's science that can guide that. And then you bring up the quarantine part too. when you talk about, even if you talk about the first pre-test needed or the first, the one test system, you still need to talk about quarantine management, because from the Alaska data, we know that about 5% to 6% of the people opted for the quarantine and not test. 13% of the people were essential travelers or essential workers, and so they didn't need the pre-test. They were excluded from the first pre-test. So you have a 20% of those population that need to be quarantined. The 13% that were essential workers didn't need to be quarantined because they were exempt, but there's that 5%. So in either of the system, you need a robust quarantine management, and we don't have that currently. We have the Safe Travels program or work Google Sheet form that people can fill up on the website. It goes into a spreadsheet without any management to prompt people daily or randomly to check in and see where they're supposed to be. It doesn't have any tracing capability. So we have one phone call to people who are supposed to be in quarantine in that 14-day period, asking them, are you supposed to quarantine? Now, what's somebody supposed to say if they're supposed to be on quarantine? Yes. And then that's it. But there's no way to make sure that that system is robust. There's no way to make sure that people are being honest. And so if you have 5% of those people with Alaska data picking that option, you have 5% there outside of the pre-testing that's going to be missed. And so I feel like the opening up October 15th with a one test, it's like, is the DOH ready to have a public health infrastructure to have an onslaught of tourists come? We were just, we found out a month and a half ago or 2 months ago that the DOH is beleaguered and then leadership changes and all that stuff. We haven't heard what their whole public health plan is. We haven't actually heard from any of the DOH higher up in leadership if they are along with this one test plan. And what's, my friend is in a tourist town in Mexico, and their business to reopen, the businesses in that area to reopen, they have to fulfill certain criteria. Certain masks are needed, certain shields are needed for the workers in these businesses. When I go to the businesses open here in Maui, I see people wearing a bandana. I see people wearing good masks. I see people wearing some shields. It's so not uniform, not standard, not guided by anything that science we know is out there can guide us. There's no guidance there. So I feel like, yeah, you know what? You may be able to get away with the one test thing with masking mandates in Hawaii, but is your DOH ready? Have they presented the public a solid plan? Is your contact tracing capability still at 300 when it needs to be at a certain number? Do you have quarantine management to catch the 5% that's not going to do the testing? I don't think the answers are there. And I think you have to be fair to people and say, we don't have those answers, so let's slow down, phase it out. We are for reopening. I'm for reopening because our economy is suffering. People are unemployed. People are going to lose their health insurance. I have people right now saying, Dr. Yan, do my procedure before November or December 31st when my insurance runs out because of this and that. And I try to accomplish that, but it's like, we want to reopen. If we do the quarantine plus the second test, it will slow down the tourists coming. It will give the DOH time to catch up to really have a good public health infrastructure response to the reopening of our society, of our economy.
There's no, real quickly, there is no guarantee. Okay, and this I pose this to Dr. Evslin. I've spoke of it before. There is no guarantee of these knee-jerk reactions by our administration. So I pose the question to Dr. Green. What is that trigger that will cause something to go into another shutdown? Because the third shutdown is going to be bad. We all know that. So I ask you this question. because it goes aligned with that question. And that is, as a medical professional, he's taking a position, and it seems like a lot more medical doctors have taken this other. So there's this whole gamble that happens. Either he's right and everybody else is proven wrong, or he's wrong and everybody else is right. It's, I mean, it's a crazy thing that's going to happen. What do you say to that, sir?
Um, well, you know, I wish that he could be right. All the medical statistical modeling suggests that he's not going to be right. It would be so strange for him to be right, particularly, you know, maybe they can handle the surge that they will get. Without a doubt, they will get a surge. Maybe on Oahu they can, but I can say with a lot of sad confidence that we can't handle a surge. I mean, a real surge on any of these neighbor islands here. You know, what brings me to the next part of my little thing is I do have some suggestions for things that you know, we might consider doing. If this is appropriate time to put them in. I woke up yesterday morning seeing that the mayor had asked for a second test at 72 hours after arrival, you know, which is much better than at the airport. At the airport is really ridiculous. A lot of those people are going to get their test at the airport before they take off, and then they're going to get another test when they arrive. Here, it's too soon. Even if it's a pre-test 72 hours before, a test at the airport is not going to be that helpful. So I was very pleased to see that our mayor said, at least let's do a test 72 hours later. And I was thinking of, you know, writing another column, and I was thinking of this thing, you know, maybe we would add a lot of incentive to tourists. We would give them something called the Kipuka bracelet, little oasis of safety bracelet, a little yellow, you know, one of those things like you get at a pool to show that they were respecting our island, and they would maybe get discounts in the stores. And I was kind of building up this case in my mind, particularly because I have so much respect for our mayor and Dr. Berriman, the district health officer. I mean, they've been right on so many times in this thing. But the more I thought about it, and the more I looked at the Alaska statistics, and then I talked that day to my friend at Alaska, I thought, no, voluntary testing at 72 hours is plain not good enough. It's just, one, they're not going to come in large numbers to get the test. Two, it's too soon anyway to pick up those. You really need 6 days after they get here to pick them up, the ones that are on the flight and so on that caught it. So my thought is this: we need to slow down for several reasons. One is the new testing is very close. There's going to be spit testing available, I think, in 1 to 2 months, which will change everything. Imagine all the kids go to school, they spit in the morning in their little container, they're all checked, or they're checked before they leave their home in the morning, and they know they're clean. That is going to change the testing. The new testing is going to change everything, number one. Two, the treatments are getting better. Three, a vaccine is coming out. So I'd like to slow us down. And my suggestion is that our mayor say, I want to opt out for 3 weeks. It's not forever. I'm not going to join. I'm just going to opt out for 3 weeks. And that would allow us, one, to watch the rest of the state. And actually, I would hope all the neighbor islands opted out for 3 weeks. Let Oahu see what happens there. 3 weeks may not be soon enough, but we could start gathering data. It would be fantastic if the airlines told us how many were positive that they tested. You know, that would be a nice piece of data to know. But by opting out, just a clean, we'll say it's going to be 3 weeks and we're going to opt out. It would give us a chance to kind of look at this and to set it up. I do think that when we open, and particularly if there's some softening at the state level, I would strongly suggest that we should open. We need to find a way to open. I'm not arguing with that piece at all. But I think I would do so-called soft opening. I would do exactly what the science says. 6-day quarantine, you get your test after 6 days. Now, of course, that's going to be less tourists coming to us, but it's going to be a special kind of person that wants to go to a safe place and they want to stay longer. And there are plenty of those people out there. So I do think we'll build a tourist base. It'll be kind of a different tourist than one that's coming in for a brief 6 days, but they're out there. And that gives us more data. We find out, okay, who's turning positive at that 6th day? You know, if we find that it's hardly anybody, we rank it back to 4 days. You know, we can keep playing with this with real data. And 3 weeks is not the end of the, you know, we made it this long, we could make 3 more weeks. And, you know, there's more and more talk that the third stimulus would come through. That third stimulus would buy us time. And I think we need to buy the time. I have some more points on that, but I'm going to stop there for any comments. That's just a concrete step, something we could say right this minute. Let's just do it. And it allows our mayor to kind of take charge again, not be pushed into a corner like I think, like my impression is that's what's happened at this point.
And for Maui, I'm for reopening actually October 15th. I've worked hard with people in the community, nonprofits, for-profits. We feel that we can have enough testing possible to welcome 1,000 to 2,000 travelers. We feel that we can employ the contact tracing app that I introduced to you guys on the show as well. The biggest part about that app is actually a quarantine management system that we can deploy immediately when we start to open October 15th. And I also agree with Dr. Evslin that not only will we get the different kinds of tourists to come, but there will be that demand because, as you know, a lot of places that have surges in the mainland are doing distance learning. The weather will change soon. A lot of people will have to go indoors in different parts of the mainland. The weather will get colder. A lot of families in those parts of the mainland will want to come somewhere safe and tropical and for longer periods of time. So we can still get travelers to come, but in the safest way possible. And that means the pre-boarding tests within 72 hours before coming, 5, 6, 7 days. We all have to be unified and agree on how many days of quarantine, and then the testing, the second test to come. And I feel that we will have tourism come, a different kind of tourist, family-based, long-term based, longer than 7 days. And we will kind of start to get the economy going and also have our DOH come up because I want our public health infrastructure to ramp up because I feel that in the long run, COVID-19 is actually a rehearsal for more pandemics coming, and it will come more frequently, and it won't take 100 years. So if we get the DOH here in Hawaii to build up their system, add technology to their, to their infrastructure, I feel that we can face the future with better tools, especially now because in this pandemic, we actually have more money than if you say in 10 to 20 years or 30 years, we have another pandemic, right? Because this is the first time we've had something like this in 100 years. So there's a lot of money to build up the infrastructure. And I feel like this is that opportunity. And so it's close to the science. It's true to the science that we do the 2-test system with the quarantine in between. And I feel that Maui has the capacity to open up October 15th with the quarantine in place, with our partners on the ground, and then have the DOH catch up to really boost the on the ground defense. So the first defense will be your first test. 70% will be screened out. Second defense will be the quarantine and the second test. And the third defense will be how to reopen our businesses and what kind of requirements and protocols we have to have in place in those environments. And worker PPE, PPE safety. And I feel like it will slow things down, but we will have the economy restarted and there will be no closure. Because if you think about it now, a lot of the hotels, a lot of the businesses are spending a lot of money up front to reopen again. If we shut down again, that will just kill their businesses. So if you do it in a slower manner, you're ensuring that there's no other shutdown. There won't be another shutdown. You just have to chug along slowly until things pick up, until the tests come, until the vaccine or treatments come, and then go from there. There can be no shutdown again.
That's
real quick question for Maui, real quick, because you mentioned the nonprofits, partnering with nonprofits, but I know, as Derek said today in his interview, that the governor made it clear to him that if we did a second test, which wouldn't be mandatory, obviously, it had to have been done by the county in a county facility and not utilizing outside or third-party sources. I was wondering if you knew if that same condition was placed on Maui. I know Maui didn't go through with their request for the. I know Maui and Kauai were both of the counties were asking for that quarantine second test system, and then Mike Victorino later basically just agreed to do the one test. But are you aware if that condition was also placed with Maui?
So I wasn't aware if that condition is placed with Maui because, as you say, we did go through with our request. But if we did ask a lawyer who is very uh, who knows a lot about, what the state can do and what they can't do, and in a pandemic, for public health, the governor is able to mandate what he can and what he wants in order to protect his people. So if he mandates that it be a county facility, it doesn't make sense to me if your county facilities are not built up for that. So you can mandate something differently because you have the powers to protect your people.
Thanks, Charlie.
I think, and I've been struggling with this because the thing that's on the table right now, and I think this is what Mayor Kawakami took into consideration, that should anything go haywire, the county mayor had the ability to stop the presses and move in right away because he knew that the state would take a while. Okay, so that's why he did what he did. And I think what's happening now is it's almost as if, and Dr. Evslin alluded to this in the beginning about, our mayor getting pushed in the corner. And really, I'm not trying to, say one way or the other he got pushed in the corner or not. But the fact remains, they're giving us this option that's really not an option. They're saying you will open. And then when the poop hits the fan, it's on you. It's not on us, it's on you. And that's where I think we're going to get really stuck because Dr. Evslin knows with the amount of beds that we have here, with the amount of ventilators we have on island. The question, because Council Member Tommy Waters asked us a question, should something go haywire on Kauai, what's the next option? We got a medevac them to Oahu. Yeah, but if Oahu is already at capacity, where do you send them? So it's like what happened to me when I got medevac to Oahu. I was fortunate that there was a bed open at Queens. Now, a good friend of mine who I played music with, he got medevac to Oahu, but was a little too late and he didn't make it in time. He passed away en route because they were still waiting for a bed. So these are hard facts that we got to deal with in handling this pandemic. And I think reopening the economy is one thing, and I believe we need to. But again, I always err on the side of caution because it was said earlier on in the game. What this is allowing us to do is relook at how tourism is and how we can restructure tourism. Dr. Evans said it. There's going to be a different kind of tourist that's going to come, one that has maybe more spending capacity because there's a lot more things that got to be done. The question is, do we have enough data to show us how many of those kind of tourists actually come to Hawaii? And I think that's where like the HTA or HLTA, I think they should have been doing their studies while everything was shut down to kind of take a look at what's out there to get it ready.
Just the reason that I said shut down for 3 weeks, Stephanie, was I didn't think the mayor has the latitude to say 5-day quarantine and then a test. I mean, that was our 3-day quarantine and a test was totally shut down. But he apparently does have the ability to say we're opting out. So I'd say opt out. Just opt out for 3 weeks. Say it's 3 weeks. Let's watch what happens. Set this other thing in place.
And that also makes sense because a lot of resorts aren't opening until closer to Thanksgiving anyways. So they have it in their mind that they're going to give it some time from October 15th until Thanksgiving. And a lot of them are announcing that they're opening closer to Thanksgiving. So having that leeway of 3 weeks makes sense. I feel that for the people, people who want to open October 15th with the one test as economy as their main thoughts on this, I feel like the system you're proposing is a gamble, and you don't need to take that gamble if you take a slower approach. And the gamble is, if you lose that gamble, we'll have another shutdown come November and Thanksgiving, and that will be costly to the people you're trying to help, the people that you say are going to be committing suicide, the people you say are going to be, losing their insurance. Those are the same people on closer to that November Thanksgiving date, if we shut down again because of high infection risk, that will bear the brunt of that next shutdown. If you take it slow, there will be no shutdown because you can control the factors going into and as time goes by. If you let the tourists come with this one test thing that has been done in different places that have not succeeded, and you can point to different factors. Oh, in Alaska, they don't wear masks. In Britain, there's something else. In Tahiti, there's something else. The fact is, the method you're employing has never been shown to prove to be successful and has led to current shutdowns. CDC warning against travel to Tahiti. Guess what? The businesses that open there, big losses again. So what is the best way to not shut down? Because the shutdown is the most costliest thing to society. And I think the slowest, phased out approach is the best approach, to never shut down, to save lives and to save the economy.
I think the frustration many of us face is that we had models to follow. We had successful plans in other countries and other states, and we had the time. And now it's rushing. We know for a fact, as you mentioned earlier about the Safe Travels app, all that does is digitize the paper form. That's all it does. There is absolutely no other value other than you taking it from a piece of paper into someone's app. There is absolutely no benefit to contact tracing or to anything. It's just you basically took the form, you put it in a digital form and put it in your phone, and which can be transmitted. Contact tracing, by a contact tracer's admission a few nights ago on the news, that they're receiving the information incomplete. The information that they're getting is not doesn't include the phone numbers, doesn't include information they need to do their job. So they got to wait for a paper report, or they even have to call the doctor at the whoever did the test to find out how they can get in touch with these people. So we know that that component is not ready. So we're asking for trouble if we move quickly. I understand that the governor made a commitment, but this whole shutdown thing, and everyone agrees we got to open up. What bothers me is we could do it safely by simply doing a second test after a quarantine, and it doesn't have to be a long quarantine. But he is insistent that we won't do that. We don't want to inconvenience the traveler. We want to, and I'm genuinely afraid that when this happens, it's not going to take long. I mean, on Kauai's plan, the average of 5 per day on a 7-day rolling period. If you had 5 cases, 4 cases, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, you don't hit the threshold. If you had one of the 7 days with 4 active cases, then the average doesn't hit the 5 in that 7-day rolling week. So then you don't get the quarantine. And if you do that for several weeks, all of a sudden you get 150, 200 cases, active cases that have been generated. So Kauai, Doc, and you know this, Dr. Evslin, we cannot sustain that on this island, not with the medical resources, the hospital resources that we have. So it's dangerous. It's scary, and I don't know how we change this. At this point, I don't think we can. I don't think Ige is going to change his mind. Unfortunately, it really is going to come down to us taking care of ourselves, because
yeah, in decision-making science, when you're trying to make a difficult decision, it's like you do a pre-mortem with the choices that you have, right? You pre-mortem the one testing. Okay, so what will happen? A pre-mortem is like, you kind of analyze what went wrong, and you analyze the one test system, and you're like, this went wrong because we didn't have this in place, we didn't have good quarantine management, we didn't learn from the other places. And then with the two test system, you're like, okay, this went wrong because we didn't open enough fast enough to have a lot of tourists to really boost up our economy, all that stuff. But with the first test system, you get overwhelmed at that point where you're doing the postmortem, whereas the phased in approach, the quarantine with the second test, you're actually not overwhelmed when you're trying to look back. And the, coincidentally and luckily, saving lives and not shutting down, I see the pathway to that as the same thing, as the same way, like doing the two test system in the quarantine. You do it slowly, you don't shut down. That to me, like, I'm a surgeon, so I get stuck at that. Like, I can't see what they're seeing. Because if you open up the floodgates and just amass the people that would otherwise come here and spread the infection, there's so many things that can go wrong. And that to me ends up in a shutdown, which is bad for the economy. I have a hard time justifying their means, because the ends is also the same thing, like a shutdown, which is what we're trying to avoid in both, in both cases. The other one is just a better method because
Well,
you're slowing things down.
let me kind of and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Evslin. What you're saying is kind of what we were alluding to a long time ago, and that is common folks got really smart about this pandemic because we had 7 months to watch it unfold.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us really didn't have much to do but watch it unfold and watch all the mistakes and all the pluses that was made by government, but more mistakes than none. Okay, so we're watching it unfold, and now it's D-Day, and many of us know exactly what it's going to take to make that wrong move, or that just that slight spike that's going to say, okay, we need to go into a shutdown.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody's afraid of right now. Okay, so I think the administration needs to understand that we've had 7 months of this exposure, and that's why we're having a lot of keyboard warriors, and they're good at it because they've been living through it and they know exactly what we're talking about. But how do we get it funneled into the right right pathway to make some sense to the guys at the top? That's the whole problem.
Yeah. Just some final points on this. I think we're coming to the end of your time period here. I don't know how. Anyway, one is a plug. There is a website, highcovid.org, and they have an open letter that's dated 10/6/20. And it's an open letter that was written by physicians and community leaders to the leaders of the state and counties, basically saying all the things we've said on this show. It has over 700 signatures now, and it's basically supporting our providers in their thinking process. And I'd love it if people on this show went to highcovid.org, open that letter, and if they agree with what's in there, sign it. We have 700 signatures. It would be great to have thousands of signatures on there. They're going to close it in 1 or 2 days, and it would be great to get more signatures. I have one other point that I really wanted to make. I do think that the only way that our mayor can get out of this is to opt out for a short period, because it doesn't look like he's being allowed any of those other things except possibly an opt out. But if we do open, we got to talk about masking, and maybe we're running out of time here, but we have to. Masking is the best defense there is out there. One, my mask protects you and your mask protects me. But there's even evidence that masking, one, the better masks protect the person who's wearing it, for sure. But there's even evidence that a mask can act as a very crude vaccine, which is a fascinating idea. But if I'm wearing a mask and all those viral particles that Mel showed in that little thing, I would get 1/10 of them perhaps, because my mask would block it out. It's like a very weak inoculation, according to the New York Times. They had a great article. They called it crude immunization. But if you get a weak inoculation of it, chances are it's going to build up much more slowly in your body. Your body gets a chance to build a defense, and you actually have a much milder disease, and then theoretically you're immune after it. So, but masking is, if we get this surge, masking is all that's going to save us. And You know, if you look at the DOH statistics, Kauai is actually doing the worst, 50%. I don't know what 50% means, but they show us that we're at the worst masking level. I think the stores, stores shouldn't check people out who refuse to wear masks. I think restaurants have to be fanatic because the restaurant staff is really at risk. All those people have their masks off eating their food. The staff has to have good masks and they have to be on tightly. And the stores need to, enforce that below your nose doesn't work and these kind of false medical excuses. I don't know if a clerk in a store can deal with one of those, but we need to deal with them more globally. But I do think that the kind of the rules around the masking and the enforcement of those rules is going to be vital, because the masking is by far the most important thing we can do once it starts getting into our community. So I make a big push for masking. And the very last thing is apps. That Safe Travel app that they have, as you said, it saves a piece of paper. There are better and better real apps out there that are very privacy minded. They don't, they don't interfere with your privacy because it's just on your phone. But this is a new world, and we have to use technology to help us. And personally, I would say any guest that comes to the island needs to have an app on their phone until they leave. And all the app would do is tell us who they had contact with if they were positive. If they were never positive, nobody would ever know anything about them. But if they were positive, not that anybody would know who they were, but they would know somebody traveled through this place and that you might be at risk. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of apps. We should learn about them and know that this is the new way to handle pandemics is to use technology wisely. With that, I kind of rant.
We've had several, and I don't mind staying on another 15 minutes or so if you guys are able to. I think this is really good information. We've had several presentations on apps. We've had the South Korean app shown here. Demonstrated here on the show. We've sent it to the Senate COVID committee. The guy that created it for South Korea is actually a Honolulu guy. A guy from Hawaii that offered it to the state for free. They turned it down. This was an app that actually worked, and we turned it down. There's apps out there now. There's many now that were designed specifically for this, and for some reason there's some apprehension by the state to use them. They spent $1 million on basically on a transcriber. It transcribed a paper app into a digital paper application into a digital one. So there's much more we can do or we should have done. The problem right now, and I did want to real quick, Doc, because you mentioned the masks, and I see some people talking about protests. And Doctor, and I didn't forget you, but I gotta get this in because I see a lot of people talking about protesting down at the airport. Listen, it's not the visitors' fault. It's not the tourists that should be to blame. They're taking a vacation because they have been sold this product that we're safe and that we welcome them. So please don't go harass the tourists. Don't go harass the visitors that are coming off the airplane. That's not gonna do any good. The problem is not the visitors, it's our governor, and that's where you should direct your frustrations and your anger to, in the way of emails or letters or whatever. It's not the visitor. Think about it. How many of you in the last month, let's just go last month, have seen pictures of your friends in Vegas? Proud because they're at a slot machine with a mask. How many of your friends, how many of you watching have gone to Vegas? Never mind the risk of you getting on that plane, going to Vegas, picking up the virus, bringing them home. How many of you have done that? How many of you have family and friends that have done that? So please, the target here is not the visitor. Trust me, I want to see this place open up. I wanted to see it open safely. The best thing we can do right now is, as the doctor said, wear your stinking mask. And don't complain about it. Social distance, wash your hands, wear your mask. I don't care how many tourists come here. Because holding signs at the airport is not going to change the governor's mind. But if we can flood his office and flood his administration with the emails and following our medical experts. But signs at the airport, that's number one, that's not Pono, that's not what we do, because it's not their fault. It's not their fault. If you want to help, don't travel either. Don't go to the mainland and bring back something to your family. Anyway, sorry, I just have to get that out because I've been seeing that on Facebook lately where a lot of them are my friends in Vegas. And Come on, man. What's good for one is good for all.
I have a suspicion that the state government is okay with taking the risk of having a surge because of these tests that are becoming available to our state, like the Binax test, and they feel that they can surge test and eliminate this. But I just want to remind them that we surge test Oahu, but it was the shutdown that made the effect we wanted. So if we want to, we can't test out of this. We have to, it's either shut down again or you do it in the most Pono way, which is the slowest way possible. Phase it out. You can open up October 15th, but you just do it in a more responsible way.
Well, you know what really I think is hard is we saw all the media coverage about when the Surgeon General was here. We talking about all these 100,000 kids. And everybody, ooh, wow. I said,
30
okay,
million
yeah.
for those 3 days, 30 million.
I said, well, right on, right on. And then Doubting Thomas, I mean, the AG became the Doubting Thomas. He goes, 55 tests. What did it show? That's right, 300 positives. What did it prove? And I say, exactly my point, LG. We've been trying to tell you. Why didn't you take the damn test and surgically strike those heavy areas that you've been getting all these positive cases and test the bejesus out of those areas until you know exactly if you got it under control or not. No scold us because you was over there go, yeah, we got the Surgeon General. Yeah, we got all these tests. And then you shut down these tunnels, and next thing you know, you get backlash about the tunnels. And then everybody go, we were told these tests are free. Oh yeah, but you got to pay for all the personnel, which came up to about 30 million total. And then
And the way they tested wasn't validated with how the
right.
test should have been done. And so they
A lot
allowed
of people, a lot of people,
self-swabbing. Yeah.
a lot of people were doing their own. And I found out there's this new breed of human. They have a third nostril because that third nostril produced a lot of these test results. And the test results were, I'm positive, but I didn't even show up for the test. Okay, that's from the third nostril.
Yeah, they were. I had gotten messages. I know that I can remember from at least two people that got one came back inconclusive, or they had a message that their test was contaminated. They never took the test, and a second one was their test came back positive. They never took the test. So, yeah, those things are just I don't give those numbers any credence whatsoever at all. But back to the topic, the whole issue, Doc, both of you. Where do we go from here? Hicovid.org. I posted the link, guys. Look in the comments, it's there. hicovid.org. Get involved and get engaged. Let's do it. Let's not give up. Let's not give up, and let's stay the course.
And I think we need to appeal to our county government because they're the ones given responsibility to offer the response to a surge or response to whatever consequences this opening has. I feel Dr. Evslin has the right path for Kauai and maybe Maui. Since hotels are not going to open anyways, closer to Thanksgiving, we get the testing we need. We are close to getting the testing that in Maui, we have the testing we need to handle travelers up to 2,000 a day. And then we have another lab that might be coming that can test 5,000 per day. We have Dr. Miskovich's team that has a capacity for 50,000 tests a day. And that all it takes is a political will to be able to have them come and test here. So testing, quarantine management using the app. Perseus has that in the app already. And then having the businesses reopen with protocols in place and the right kind of protection and PPE for their workers while they're on duty. We know this is aerosolized. We know that a lot of the super spreading events happen in indoor, poorly ventilated areas. We know hand washing helps. So having hand sanitizers and wipes in common areas in all the businesses. Not just asking people to mask, but asking people to carry hand sanitizers because you can't run to the bathroom all the time and wash your hands, but having those hand sanitizers over 70% alcohol can help. Those kinds of messaging in the public, I think, is helpful. But the most important thing is how to buy us time to slow things down so that we don't have a surge and we don't shut down again, because that will be devastating to the economy.
Dr. Evslin? I think that's how this all started. Slow it down, ask for a 3-week opt out, and see how the numbers work on Oahu if they're so confident with it.
Yeah. The only problem with 3 weeks is I did notice in Tahiti, it took 3 weeks to explode. In Alaska, it went up really fast. I mean, these drafts are so dramatic. You just see it go straight up like this. In Fiji, it goes 3 weeks and then straight up Tahiti. It's scary. I mean, it's scary to think of the potential this thing has to explode. And we've seen it everywhere. You know, it has this latent period and then it's just like little pieces of kindling everywhere and they just burst into this huge flame. So I'm nervous and I really hope that our mayor, who's been fantastic, I mean, I give him all the credit in the world. I wish that he would just opt out for 3 weeks, watch what happens, get our testing in place and hope that in 3 weeks we could do the proper quarantine and a second test. And then we'd be wonderful. You know, we would stay safe. It would be an unbelievable destination.
It will be a reward to the sacrifices the residents have made the last 7 months. All the successes are because majority of the people in Hawaii have taken their kuleana seriously the last 7 months.
Well, you know, I questioned the 3 weeks, Doc, when you said 3 weeks, because it didn't seem like it was long enough. And I hate to sound like the negative Nancy, but that kind of, you know, because I think in a perfect world, if you had everything in place with the app, with the contact tracing, and you could contact trace accurately and effectively, then you know 3 weeks might not be a low ball. I think that you might be able to get it done if you could effectively contact trace every single case that came through, visitor case. I'm not sure we have that capacity. Maybe we do on Kauai. I'm not sure, but I know we don't have it on Oahu. And you know, how many of those people coming into Oahu will be going to another island? You know, I worked in a hotel for 10 years, just up until about a year ago. And I talked to a lot of visitors, and I gotta say, most of them do island hopping. They'll spend a couple of days on one island, another couple of days on another island. And weird, they always end up on Kauai, and they always say Kauai is their favorite. So, and the contact tracing is going to be difficult. And again, so 3 weeks, I think 3 weeks is a very, it's a good
But just
place.
remember though, Charlie, Mel, we've been working to have this infrastructure in place. So the contact tracing and the quarantine management app is ready to go. All it takes is political will. Scott Miskovich has his testing people ready. That's ready to go. Just needs political will. We have labs coming to Maui that can help out Kauai. The Kauai folks have been trying to get testing equipment and could be ready to go. I just feel like the political will isn't there.
Well, the political will at the state level, because the political will on Kauai, Derek, he was the first to put the plan out, and he has the tests, he has the testing capacity. It's just that the governor doesn't have the political will. But you know, I actually thought Derek's plan was a brilliant plan. I really did. I thought it was brilliant. And I know there was some, again, Doc, I know there was some concerns about the time, that 72 hours may not be enough as a post-test, but regardless, the concept was the right concept, and the governor just said no. So it's kind of hard. I mean, how do you get the governor to change his mind when his focus is really on the visitor industry, the tourist industry? It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult. And we got to keep bombarding the highcovid.org. I mean, somebody said, you know, I sent 2 or 3 emails. I never got a response. Don't worry. They're getting it. We just got to keep sending it. Just keep sending. Don't stop.
You know, one thing that Mel and I discovered doing this show is that I would tell Mel, I said, you know, let's keep an eye on who these advisors are, because I've always asked that question. That, you know, when you do a medical consult, especially when you got a patient who's seriously ill, right? You won't go and consult with the janitor who's sweeping the floor right outside the room, right? You look for other doctors to consult with. So when we're looking at this virus, I would assume that there's these medical experts up on the fifth floor in the Capitol that are consulting the governor as well as the lieutenant governor. But based on all the information that Dr. Luke and I mean not Luke, but Lee has put out, and you, Stephanie, it's just like I kind of question: were there experts up there making the call? So now it almost seems like those experts were from the business community, the economical side, the economy side, because we know one of them very rarely, and we called it out. And I mean, he happens to be he sits on that board, and he's been on TV several times talking as if he's speaking almost in medical jargon, but yet he's the senior VP of Hawaiian Airlines. So that told me something already. I started to look at it, I go, wow, maybe, is that something on the inside that many of us don't know? Because if we were to see the path with as medical professionals you are laying down, I would assume you're giving us raw data that because people are getting sick, right? People are getting infected. We're not talking about data that's saying, well, we're sick, but yet we have a Simon stand that needs to open. That's not what we're talking about. If we're talking about this virus that can kill, and both of you know my brother died from it. He was one of the first 3,000 that died from it in New York. We, as the observers, we're watching you folks. We want to go down that path. What is the medical science telling us? Because we're not doctors. We're going to listen to you. But then when you have someone who's a medical doctor, and I think that's what the community as a whole started to get miffed about, is that in the beginning, he said a lot of things that we could associate with. We said, yeah, right on. But then all of a sudden, when that path changed and it went totally against what the medical experts are saying, we said, hey, what's going on here? What is it? So, it comes down to a point. You start siding with numbers.
But we're not just, Charlie, we're not only going from the medical part of it. If you also want to go to business side, there's been economists, world-renowned, US-renowned economists saying that the best path to your economic recovery is saving lives in your community, in your states, in your this, like over and over. They've compared countries. There's graphs on this. They've compared countries of who lost the most GDP and who saves the most lives. And it's always the countries that save the most lives or that risk a small amount of lives have the least amount of GDP lost. So over and over, that has been shown. 1918, when they looked at the cities that protected lives better, had a rebound faster and better than other cities that didn't protect lives. So if you look at the medical part, it's in line with what we're saying. If you look to the economists, to the business people who analyze data, not just going from anecdotal evidence or not just for their desire and need to open up to save their businesses money, they are also pointing to that if you save lives, you save your economy and the rebound is better.
This is what I've always been saying from day one. It's all about the messaging. Their messaging that came up from the fifth floor at the Capitol, you got to admit, wasn't always the best. Because when you got people starting to feel negative from the get-go, you just stop and ask yourself, okay, what the heck is going on? Because for the majority of us, we're lay people. And we're just going along for the ride because we have no control of whatever the decision makers have. But then, we get people on like yourselves that bring us this new light that we can look at it and says, hey, yeah, it does make sense. Then now we can start connecting the dots. Then it makes sense. But we had 7 months to practice this. I think that's my point. We had 7 months to practice this. And yet, when we were at high times, right? When we were at low times, we had the state shut down when it was low. And then when it was high, there was kind of like fluttering. And so now they said, okay, it's like a surf, right? Every time the wave breaks, and now you just say, you know what, gang, we got to go for it. Because if we don't go for it now, we'll never make it past that break. Let's go for it. And what we're seeing is we're on a little raft, and you got one of the biggest waves coming in, and I think we're going to get clobbered. I think that's what it is.
You know, in terms of the medical part of this, for Dr. Josh Green, I felt he was remarkably good all through the first months of this. He was crystal clear. His reports were the best reports out there. He was in such stark contrast, I thought, to what was appeared to be going on with the Department of Health. I thought he did a wonderful job of kind of presenting the issues that were facing them and doing things about them. I am puzzled by this latest part, which is going to unfortunately could be the most important part of this. I hear he's a really good doctor. I know that he looks at data well. I've seen him analyze data really, really well. I am puzzled why he's in opposition to what I hear from all of the experts and the physicians that we've been in contact with. There's this stark difference in a way of looking at this last piece of it. So I don't want to remove credit for all of what I think that he did, which was very, very positive, but I wish that he would listen to us for this last part. And if they don't want to do it for Oahu, let the neighbor islands do it. As the WHO says, we're at real risk. We're a low transmission place, getting from high transmission places, and we do not have the capacity. We meet the criteria to be worried about by the World Health Organization. And I'm hoping that the state looks at this and says, okay, counties, outer islands, I call them, do your thing. So I want to give Josh credit for what he's done, but I'm hoping that he comes around to realize that at this point, we're not agreeing with it.
We've had the Lieutenant Governor on our show many times. And if you go to my YouTube channel, just go look up Mel Raposa on YouTube and just go. We have every single show that we've ever done on there. And if you go back and look at some of the old shows that we had with the Lieutenant Governor, you'll see the contrast. You'll see how hard he fought for us all throughout the first 6 months, 5.5, 6 months. All his comments that he made about the importance of testing and how, in fact, contact tracing was an issue, how he exposed, a lot of the discrepancies, and how he fought hard to turn that Department of Health around. And for the life of me, I cannot figure it out. Obviously, it's the politics. He's a lieutenant governor, but understanding that doctors, you guys have a certain code of ethics that you got to maintain. And so I'm having a difficult time because his position has basically switched 180 degrees, and now he's finding every reason, even when Honolulu's cases were going up again a few days ago, and he goes every morning on his little whiteboard and he says, we're doing great. We're doing great. Unfortunately, 3 more people died, but we're doing great, people. Let's go. We're getting there. I'm thinking, wow, it's just not the Josh I knew 5 months ago, 6 months ago. And it bothers me. He's a friend, but this COVID virus, I don't give a damn if you're a friend or not. It doesn't matter. It is what it is, and we got to deal with the aftermath. Someone just texted me that apparently there's a special on TV right now about the reopening of tourism, and I apologize to all of you for I didn't know it was on, but someone just texted me and they said that Mufi Hanneman, the Hawaiian Air CEO, and the Chamber of Commerce are all in full support, and Dr. Dara O'Carroll is on there, as well as Eric Gill from the Hotel Workers Union, strongly opposing it. So darn it, I apologize. I wish I had known, but I'm sure there'll be a replay at some point online. I can watch it. But again, that's the forces right there.
Mel, we're just important, Mel. Don't worry, we're just as important. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know, but we put the call out, doctors. We put the call out. We really wanted someone from the medical community, and not some whack nut on YouTube. I'm talking a real medical doctor to come on our show to basically support what our state is doing. I really do. I for my own self want to hear from a doctor that has dealt with, because we've had everything from virologists to epidemiologists to everything, surgeons and the works. But no one has taken us up because I don't think they exist.
They're out there. I've spoken to them, but again, they're in this false dichotomy where they're choosing economy versus lives, and I don't think it has to be that way. I don't think we need to choose. We can open up but do it slower so that we don't shut down and we don't lose lives, we save lives. So I feel like when people say economy versus lives, it's just like, again, you're pitting people in two camps when they don't have to be. You don't have to choose. You can choose this middle ground, which is slow things down, phase it out. That's all we're saying.
Speaking of the physician component, we're very interested in having physicians and medical providers of all sorts and medical workers sign this letter at highcovid.org, because it was written by the physician community with community input. And we want to, we just like the idea actually came from you guys' show. I've heard you many times, Mel, say, every doctor in the state is saying this to me, and I'm only hearing this other message from the state leadership. And so we wanted to kind of give numbers to that. So we thought, all right, let's put down the physicians' opinions here and see how many are willing to sign it. And hundreds and hundreds of doctors, nurses, and community people have signed it. It would be great to get more. If we could have a large number of healthcare providers sign this, it just gives it that much more weight. That this is the community standard of thinking. Is you need the two tests, you need a delay between them. Look at Iceland, look at the places that have fences. That's all that works. Wide open with a single pretest is a recipe for disaster. And that's, that's just saying it lightly. When we're talking about a recipe for disaster, we're talking about really sick people and people dying. It's more than just the words recipe for disaster.
And another issue too is that I'd like to hear what the leadership in DOH thinks about this, not just in, small tidbits of, quotes here and there, but a real conversation about what they think about the one test opening. Because
Well, we did put a call out to Libby Char because she supports two tests.
Yeah.
So when we heard that, said, hey, let's get her on. We've tried, as you know, we've got several doctors that's on that have direct links to her, and we said, can you please do us a favor? We just would like for her to have her hour so she can explain, because we want two sides of the coin, and maybe she can explain why certain things are done this way. Then maybe, if it seems convincing enough, I mean, I'll admit I'll buy into it, but it's just that we're just not getting it. And so, we asked for her to come on. So just to let you know.
Dr. Char made it very clear that she supports the second test as soon as the tests become available. Well, how the hell can you explain to me, how can Miskovich get 50,000 and Caldwell can do 10,000 a day, and Hawaiian Airlines can give away testing at the airport, or sell testing at the airport. Oakland Airport is giving tests away for free. Why can't this state, who has $300 million in CARES money sitting in some damn bank account, you cannot tell me that there are no resources for that. I mean, you just cannot. I don't buy that. In other words, Governor Ige, I think you're lying. That's the bottom line. But Dr. Char, so she doesn't, I mean, she says what she believes, but she's got to put that caveat because she works for the governor. And that's sad, because money should never be a reason to not be saved. That's just how I feel. And we're not talking about mega bucks. We're talking about an opportunity where we could do exactly what you're saying, Dr. Yan. You can open up and you can be safe. We don't have to split the community trying to get to that same, everybody wants the same thing. And it doesn't, it's not like we got to go build a freaking physical wall around the island of Honolulu. No, it's signing a procurement, setting up the testing, and it's done. It can be done in an 8-hour day. And it's been 7 months, and we're taking the dangerous direction, I think. And I can only feel how, imagine how you guys feel, doctors, that's going to end up having to treat these people.
And if you think about it too, the lack of testing is due to people's pronouncement that we're not going to do the second test, right? This is America. Once you announce there'll be a second test required, you will have profiteering businesses lining up to test those people. It's just the way things work. You announce that that's what's needed, it will be provided for, because guess what? There's money to be made, and people are going to make that money. So if you're not going to announce that people need the second test here, the businesses won't come to provide those tests. They'll go at the airport, they'll go at SFO, they'll go to LAX, they'll go to the outer testing requirements. But once you decide you want Hawaii to have a second test, your tests will come knocking on your doors. They will be like, we're here, we can set up this lab in 2 weeks, we can set this lab, we already have it, you can send it to us in California with 36 turnaround time. It's America. We will get it because there's money to be made, and especially with traveling and tourism, right? Just make that commitment and it will come. It's already here, actually.
Well, when Derek announced his first plan, I thought it was ingenious for him to say that it was going to open up an opportunity for an industry here on Kauai for our local guys and gals to create that business venture to provide that. I thought it was just amazing to think like that, and sorry.
It's billions of dollars that can boost
look,
up the economy locally.
look at what happened when pre-test was first announced, right? There was nothing out there. Then all of a sudden, airlines get a test. Airports giving free tests. So I told Mel, hey Mel, what did they do? They just plant one test in the ground and water it every day, and next boom, all these tests and bloom up from someplace because it started to sprout out all over the damn place. Then on top of that, they said we're going to have a mail-in test, and the governor said no. And the next day, it's approved. So I'm like, what the? You see, when stuff like that happen, I can only laugh because, as a cop, it's almost like, I know the suspect's around here someplace, and you blink your eye and boom, he's in a jail cell, something like that. It's happening over and over again, and I keep on telling them, Mel, we got so much material to bring on the show to, inform and educate. But when all of these things happening, instead of, maybe we should be concentrating about COVID or something like this, people are asking us, Uncle Charlie, how is this test all popping up when they say we only have 4,000 tests, so we cannot test?
Only in Hawaii. It's so funny tonight on the news. They were talking about how inaccessible those tests are on the mainland right now. CVS, you got to make an appointment. They're driving to the stores. They cannot get the test. These guys got to drive 30, 40 miles outside of their town to go get a test. The Hawaiian Air's test at LA and San Francisco, I guess, not ready yet. So not till the end of next week or maybe the week after. So they're having some issues. Bottom line, we're not ready to do this on October 15th. But anyway, it's 8:30, Doc. I want to give you guys an opportunity to whatever closing comments you want, Doc. Anything you want to say. And take your time.
One, again, just express appreciation for inviting us on your show, and the amazing job you guys do. It's truly, I can't believe I don't believe how you can hold your households together. That's every night. This is what you're doing. That's just truly amazing what you're doing. I've gone over all the stuff. I do think that that WHO says, the World Health Organization, that we're places at risk, and we are. And I remain appalled that our state government is not accepting the idea that the neighbor islands meet the definition of risk for the World Health Organization. We have very low transmission here, people coming from high transmission, and we do not have the hospital capacity. And that they won't let us, do our own path with second tests and short quarantines is truly appalling in my mind. I did have two other points that I just happened to think of, just real quick. The tier system that the mayor put in, I'm kind of glad to see a tier system that would trigger us to shut down again. The numbers are too high, I think, though. Basically, it's the way I look at it. It says 35 to 56 new cases a week would get us into a shutdown. That's huge. And we've only had 59 cases in the whole time period. So that it takes that many in a week to shut us down, when we know that one case, in the Kalaheo area, led to 20 cases in a day or so. So I'm very worried about the tier numbers being too high. So even if we do open, or if we take the 3 weeks and we don't open, I'd love that tier to come to a better number. And you mentioned Perseus app. That is a wonderful app. So there are apps out there, and I know Stephanie's been a big proponent of it, but there are amazing apps, and we have to understand COVID's not going away, and when it goes away, there's going to be another pandemic. We have to embrace technology. We don't just want an app that transcribes paper into electronic version. We need apps that think, that do geofencing and contact tracing and respect privacy, which is a really important part. So I'm going to end by just thanking you for what you're doing. I'm hoping the messages that we're all putting out there, trickle into somebody's ears and make a difference. But I certainly appreciate the ability to speak out on your show.
Thanks, Doc. And it's honored to have you on as well, man. I mean, good information. Hope we can get you back on again. Dr. Yan?
I second that. Thank you. You guys are leading the, what's important these days is substantive discussion. And I feel like when you have your guest on, you expand on the topics of discussion and you let people talk. You discuss things fully. You don't dumb anything down for the community, and I appreciate that a lot for all the efforts that you guys put in night in every day. And so we're very grateful for your support too at High COVID. It's good that the physicians, healthcare workers, communities from the Big Island, Kauai, Maui are now talking together in this in these formats, but also in our email threads that you both are part of. And so I'm very grateful for that kind of communication. And just to end quickly, my physician part of my brain and also the part of my brain that thinks about the economy, business, the math part of my brain. I just, I'm a surgeon. I cut down to what's needed. And so I feel like they all point to the same conclusion, that the win-win is to take the phased out slow approach, open slowly, and then see how it goes. It's such a gamble to people's lives that you can't take back, to try to do something that's not anywhere proven to have worked, that it's been tried. I think experience is a great teacher, and what's greater than that is other people's experiences teaching us the right way forward.
Charles?
Well, as always, I'd like to say thank you to both Dr. Evslin and Dr. Yan for joining us. It's always a privilege. Thank you very, very much. And to our viewers, like we say, we always try to inform and educate. I want to leave you with one thing, and that is for our viewers out there. None of this would be possible if it's not for you folks. You folks wanted information, and we just used our skills as two plain old retired cops that can go out and go find the information, and we give it to you however you want to use it. And if you don't need to use it, then we move on and we come to the next day and we have to find some more information that you can use. But just always remember one thing. It's very important we take it slow, we take it easy. Before they used to call Hawaiians lazy. But these are one of the times I wish they called us state lazy, so we can come off the throttle a little bit. There is no race to the top right now. Just come back off a little bit and just do everything in a safe way. Because like I said before, we can coexist. It's possible, but you just got to do it safely. And I just hope and pray that, if there's that ounce of light that is shown at the end of the tunnel that the governor can see, I hope he sees it, because we want it to be a win-win. We don't have to go split the community in half over this. We want it to be a win-win for everybody. So, Mel.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Dr. Yan, Dr. Evslin. I posted a video earlier tonight from this doctor. I don't know if you guys seen this guy, Doc. His name is Doc D-U-C Vuong, V-U-O-N-G. He's out of Houston, Texas, retired bariatric surgeon. And but he took an interest in COVID because he found that COVID patients, obesity was a very huge problem for COVID patients. This guy is amazing. He does drop the F word a little bit, so it's not a family show. But he talks about apparently has a YouTube channel, so he does shows I think every day. But yesterday's show he talks about how China kept their numbers so low, and we cannot. I'm gonna post that video up again tonight, so you gotta have to go look for it. Gotta check it out. It's a little lengthy, but he covers the whole thing. I mean, he talks straight. We're trying to get him on the show actually, but please watch that because he talks about everything you guys are talking about tonight. And really, the biggest problem he said cities in America make and our country is making, we opened up too soon. And but he talks about every aspect of it. It's entertaining. You got to watch it. You know, we 3 more days. So regardless of what the governor does or doesn't do, ladies and gentlemen, again, wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands, don't congregate in big groups. Okay. If each of us do that and we're disciplined enough to do that every single day of our lives, individually we'll be okay. Things are going to happen. Things beyond our control is going to happen, but we can take care of ourselves. We can make sure that we are as safe as we can possibly be. So that's my message for tonight. Again, Doc, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
Keep
you.
up
Thank
the
you.
good work. highcovid.org. Please visit that tonight and get your resources there. And other than that, we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Everybody stay safe. God bless. We love you guys. Aloha.